Ladies and gentlemen, certainly, here's an intro to your motivational speech in the calm, profound, and reflective style of Shi Heng Yi. Before we begin, I ask you to take a moment, not for me, but for yourself. A moment of stillness. Breathe in deeply, and now breathe out. There are many messages in this world. Some come from people, others come from experience, but a few, very few, feel as if they come from something far beyond our understanding. They stir the soul, they make us stop and reflect, and sometimes they come as a final warning. In the ancient traditions, a warning is not a punishment, it is a sign, a sacred opportunity to wake up, to return to what is essential, to realign our mind, body, and spirit with the natural order. This speech is not entertainment, it is not theory, it is a message, it is for those who are ready to hear. Before June 25th, 2025, you must ask yourself, are you truly awake? Are you prepared? Or have you allowed noise, distractions, and the artificial world to pull you away from the deeper truth? In these next moments, I invite you to walk with me. Not with the feet, but with awareness. We will explore what it means to receive a divine warning, and how to transform it into strength, clarity, and inner peace. In life, before any great shift occurs, there is a stillness. A silence so deep that most people overlook it. This silence is not empty, it is full of information. It is the space where truth waits to be heard. Before any storm, before any divine warning reveals itself in full, there is always a period of calm. And in that calm, those who are attuned can sense that something is about to change. This is not fear, nor is it excitement. It is awareness, it is presence, and it is rare. In many spiritual traditions, including the ancient Shaolin path, it is taught that nature never moves without first giving a sign. The clouds thicken before the rain, the air shifts before the wind howls. The animal becomes still before it strikes, and so too in our spiritual lives. Before we are struck with a powerful realization or a necessary transformation, there are always signs. But to perceive them, the mind must be silent. The body must be still, and the heart must be open. The silence before the storm is often ignored by those who are caught in the rush of daily living. They move too fast, their minds are filled with noise. They chase goals, distractions, and illusions without ever questioning the direction. But for those who stop, even briefly, they begin to notice something feels off. The timing of life begins to shift. Patterns that once seemed secure begin to fall apart. These are not coincidences, these are part of the warning. God's final warning is not something that appears suddenly without preparation. It is built up over time through the choices we make and the energy we allow into our lives. But as people become desensitized to their inner world, they lose the ability to detect the early warnings. They wait for something dramatic, something external, a disaster, a collapse, a voice from the sky. But the real warning comes softly. It comes through your dreams, your intuition, your subtle feelings of discomfort. It comes when your inner compass tells you something is no longer right. That silence, that deep discomfort, is the first knock at your door. To understand the silence before the storm is to understand the nature of divine communication. The divine does not scream, it whispers. It speaks in patterns, in rhythms, in energetic shifts. If you are too busy, you miss it. If you are too distracted, it passes you by. But if you sit still, if you create even a small space of awareness, something begins to unfold. You begin to see the alignment of events, the synchronicities. The lessons repeating themselves. You begin to hear the silence not as absence, but as presence. This is why stillness is essential on any spiritual path, because it is only in stillness that you can begin to feel what is really moving beneath the surface. And when the storm comes, and it always comes, it is those who have practiced listening in silence who are prepared, not because they had more knowledge, but because they had more awareness. In this world, most people react to storms. But the wise prepare for them long before the clouds gather. They prepare not with fear, but with presence. They pay attention to what others overlook. They adjust their lives when the signs begin to show. This is not superstition, it is discipline, it is refinement of perception, and it is the difference between being swept away or standing still when the world begins to shift. God's final warning does not begin with thunder. It begins with whispers. It begins with the quiet sense that time is running short, that something needs to change, that your current path may not be the right one. This is not something to panic about. It is something to respect, because the silence before the storm is not punishment. It is mercy. It is grace. It is an invitation to come back to what truly matters. To align with the higher order is to realign oneself with the natural flow of existence, the unshakable rhythm that governs all life. It is not man-made, and it does not bend to ego, ambition, or ignorance. It is the original law that holds the universe in balance, from the orbit of planets to the breath in your lungs. This higher order is not something that can be controlled or manipulated. It can only be honored, recognized, and followed with humility. When one is in alignment with this order, there is peace, clarity, and a deep sense of purpose. When one is misaligned, there is confusion, resistance, and suffering. Human beings over time have drifted far from this higher order. Through distraction, artificial constructs, and endless desires, they have attempted to replace natural truth with man-made systems. But no matter how sophisticated these systems become, they cannot override the basic principles that govern life. Nature does not argue, it corrects, it observes imbalance and responds accordingly. The more a person lives against these natural laws, the more chaotic and unstable their life becomes, and yet the correction is not cruelty. It is compassion. It is the way the higher order brings you back to what is real. To live in alignment requires listening, deep, honest listening, to the signals that arise within and around you. Your body knows when it is being misused. Your mind knows when it is being polluted. Your soul knows when it is being ignored. These subtle forms of awareness are not weaknesses. They are your guidance system. They are how the higher order speaks to you. But modern life has created layers of noise over this voice. Comfort, convenience, speed. These things silence the inner compass. And when that compass is lost, the direction of life becomes reactive, not intentional. When you begin to return to the higher order, you don't need to seek outside validation. Nature does not need to prove its authority. A mountain does not need permission to rise. A river does not ask before it flows. And in the same way, your soul, when aligned, does not seek applause or approval. It simply moves in accordance with what is right. This type of alignment brings strength that is quiet but unbreakable. It brings decisions that are firm yet peaceful. It brings action that is purposeful without force. To be aligned is not to be perfect. It is to be aware. It is to walk with awareness in every action. When you eat, you are aware of what nourishes and what poisons. When you speak, you are aware of whether your words uplift or damage. When you move, you are aware of whether you are moving toward growth or toward destruction. This level of self-honesty is rare because it requires the death of the ego, but in its place, something much greater is born, a life that flows with the current of truth. This higher order cannot be seen with the physical eyes, but its effects are everywhere. You see it in people who live simply, yet fully. You see it in those who walk calmly through storms. You see it in those who do not chase, yet are never empty. These individuals are not special by birth. They are aligned by choice. They have chosen discipline over distraction, stillness over speed, truth over comfort. When you return to alignment, everything unnecessary begins to fall away. You no longer carry the weight of false identities. You no longer fear silence. You no longer seek what you don't need. And in that shedding, you become light. You become open. You become able to receive what the higher order has always been offering, a life of clarity, strength, and deep inner peace. This is not reserved for saints or sages. It is available to anyone who is willing to pause, listen, and return to the rhythm that has always been present underneath the noise of the world. Disconnection from the self is the root of almost all suffering in the modern world. It begins slowly, almost invisibly. At first, it shows up as simple forgetfulness, forgetting to breathe deeply, forgetting to listen to the body, forgetting to be present. But over time, this forgetfulness becomes a way of living. People begin to identify more with roles, labels, and expectations than with their own inner truth. They live as a reaction to the external world rather than as an expression of the internal one. And the longer this continues, the more distant one becomes from their true essence. Modern life rewards speed, comparison, and performance. These things are not inherently wrong, but when they replace reflection, solitude, and self-inquiry, they become dangerous. From a very young age, individuals are taught to chase grades, achievements, validation, attention. But in this endless pursuit, something is lost. The sense of self becomes built on fragile foundations. When you ask someone who they truly are, without their titles, their possessions, or their followers, many cannot answer. They feel a void, a hollowness, because they have never taken the time to meet themselves without distraction. Disconnection from self manifests in many subtle ways. It shows up as anxiety that has no clear source, as exhaustion that sleep cannot fix, as irritation with others that is really a reflection of internal imbalance. It appears when people surround themselves with noise because silence feels threatening. It appears when every moment is filled with stimulation because stillness reveals discomfort. The disconnection becomes a form of escape, but what is being escaped is not the world, it is the self. The self is not just thoughts and emotions. It is not the past or the future. The true self exists in the space before identity, before memory. It is the observer, the awareness behind all experiences. But most people are so entangled in their stories, their traumas, their ambitions, that they never return to this core. They live outside of themselves, trying to fix the external world, hoping that by changing what is outside, they will finally feel peace inside. But the path does not work that way. The inner world must be reclaimed before the outer world can be navigated with clarity. To reconnect with the self requires courage. It requires sitting in silence without reaching for distraction. It requires watching the mind without judgment and listening to the heart without resistance. It is not a comfortable process. When the layers begin to peel back, what is revealed is often pain that was buried, truths that were ignored, fears that were suppressed. But in that raw space, something powerful begins to emerge: authenticity. The kind that cannot be faked or performed, the kind that allows one to move through life with presence and integrity. Disconnection from self is the reason people feel lost even when they seem successful. It is why relationships break down despite love being present. It is why individuals feel empty even when surrounded by material abundance. The outer world can only mirror what the inner world holds. And when that inner connection is broken, the reflection becomes distorted. Rebuilding that connection is not about adding more, it is about removing what is false. The noise, the masks, the expectations, all must be examined and released. Once a person reconnects with their self, life begins to feel different, even if nothing externally changes. They begin to respond rather than react. They begin to listen rather than defend. They begin to move with intention rather than impulse. This reconnection brings stability in chaos, clarity in confusion, and peace in uncertainty. The world may continue to spin with noise and speed, but the individual who is connected to their inner being moves differently. They move from a place of grounding, of centered awareness, and in that state they are no longer swayed by every storm or shaken by every opinion. They become like the mountain, rooted, silent, and unwavering. The purpose of warnings, especially those of divine nature, is not to instill fear but to create awareness. Warnings are not punishments, they are acts of mercy. They are signs placed in your path to stop you before the fall becomes too great, before the damage becomes irreversible. In ancient wisdom traditions, it is understood that every consequence is preceded by a signal, a message from life itself telling you something is out of balance. But these warnings are not always loud. Often they are subtle, whispers felt in the gut, moments of unease, dreams that linger too long, or a repeated pattern that demands attention. Divine warnings come when human beings stray too far from the natural rhythm, when they forget who they are and begin to act from ego rather than essence. These warnings can be personal, like a sudden illness, a loss, or a breakdown that forces introspection, or they can be collective, global events that shake societies and reveal deep cracks beneath the surface. In both cases, the warning is not the end. It is the beginning of a chance to return, to recalibrate, to remember what has been forgotten. There is a deep intelligence behind these moments. They are timed not by chance, but by necessity. Life, in its wisdom, does not intervene until it must. It allows freedom, it allows choice, but when the choices become harmful, both to self and others, a point is reached where intervention becomes essential. Not to destroy, but to awaken, and this awakening is not always gentle. It often comes in the form of disruption, because comfort does not always lead to clarity. Sometimes it is only through discomfort that one is willing to look deeper, to face truths that have been avoided for too long. People often pray for answers but ignore the ones that don't come in the form they expect. They want light, but not the mirror. They want peace, but not the process. Divine warnings are not wrapped in convenience. They arrive as challenges, they test the mind, stretch the heart, and push the soul into territory it has long resisted. But inside these challenges lies the opportunity for transformation, not surface-level change, but deep, foundational awakening that realigns a person with their highest truth. When the divine warns, it is because something sacred is being neglected. It may be your purpose, your integrity, your inner discipline, or your connection to the higher order. The warning brings this neglect into focus. It brings to light the areas of your life where you have settled, where you have ignored your inner voice, where you have traded truth for comfort. The purpose of the warning is not to shame, but to illuminate. It allows you to see clearly, perhaps for the first time in a long while. There is a window after a warning, a space where choice becomes powerful again. In that space, one can choose to listen, to reflect, and to shift. Or one can choose to ignore, to delay, and to continue down the same path. The divine does not force transformation, it invites it, but the invitation does not stay open forever. The longer a warning is ignored, the more intense the wake-up becomes. First a whisper, then a nudge, and eventually, if still unheard, a collapse. Spiritual traditions across the world speak of this principle in different languages. In all of them, the message is clear. Life does not intervene without cause. And when it does, it is a sign that something greater is calling you back to alignment. The purpose of the warning is to protect, to guide, and ultimately to free. It offers the chance to stop living on autopilot and to begin walking with awareness, discipline, and reverence. The world may tell you to push forward at all costs, but the divine tells you to pause, to observe, and to listen. In that pause, everything can change because the purpose of the warning is to lead you not to destruction, but to awakening. Reclaiming inner discipline is not about adopting rigid routines or punishing the self. It is about remembering your power to choose consciously, to act with awareness, and to live in harmony with a deeper principle. Discipline, in its true form, is an expression of freedom. It is the choice to rise each day with purpose, to treat the body with care, to guide the mind with clarity, and to honor the spirit with intention. Without this inner structure, life becomes reactive, chaotic, and vulnerable to the pulls of distraction, impulse, and external influence. In every spiritual tradition, discipline is the foundation. Whether it is in the form of meditation, movement, fasting, silence, or service, there is always a path that brings the individual back into alignment through consistent, intentional practice. These practices are not for performance. They are for purification. They clear away what is unnecessary, what is toxic, what is false, and in that clearing, the true self begins to emerge, not the one shaped by fear or opinion, but the one rooted in presence and integrity. Modern life discourages discipline by glorifying convenience. Fast food, instant gratification, endless entertainment, and constant stimulation create an environment where the mind forgets how to sit still, how to endure discomfort, how to wait. But the path of awakening is not found in comfort. It is found in the fire of self-mastery. Discipline teaches you how to sit with hunger without reacting, how to observe anger without acting from it, how to hear the noise of the world without losing your silence. This is strength, and it cannot be borrowed, copied, or inherited. It must be earned through daily, intentional action. The body is the first place where discipline must be restored. It is the temple that carries your spirit, and yet it is often treated as an afterthought. Neglecting rest, abusing food, avoiding movement, these habits dim the body's intelligence. To reclaim discipline means to wake up with the body, to move it, to stretch it, to breathe with it, to listen when it speaks. Every ache, every tension, every imbalance is a message. When you bring discipline to the body, it becomes an ally, not an obstacle. It supports the mind and sharpens the awareness. Then comes the mind, perhaps the most difficult arena to discipline. The mind is a wild force filled with thought patterns, stories, and voices collected over years. If left unchecked, it runs in loops, judging, doubting, fearing, distracting. Discipline of the mind begins with observation. Watching the thoughts as they arise, not to control them immediately, but to understand their origin. From understanding comes the ability to shift, to choose which thoughts are worthy of attention and which must be let go. Over time, the mind becomes quieter, sharper, more focused. It becomes a servant of awareness, not its master. Spiritual discipline ties it all together. This is the discipline to seek silence, to meditate, to reflect, to pray, or simply to sit in stillness and remember what you are. The world pulls the attention outward, constantly asking you to perform, to compete, to compare. But spiritual discipline pulls the attention inward, reminding you that peace is not found outside. It is cultivated from within. Even 10 minutes of silence each day can change the way you walk, speak, and decide. That is the power of a disciplined spirit. Reclaiming inner discipline is not a one-time event. It is a daily return. It is the willingness to choose what strengthens over what weakens, to say no to what scatters your energy and yes to what centers it. Discipline is not about perfection. It is about consistency. It is about showing up even when you don't feel like it, because you know the path you are walking leads to something higher, something more aligned, something true. And in that commitment, you become reliable not only to yourself, but to the divine order that guides all things. Discipline builds trust, not just with others, but with your own soul. The urgency of now is not measured by fear, panic, or pressure. It is measured by the deep realization that life is happening in this very moment, and that each breath, each thought, each decision is shaping the direction of your journey. June 25, 2025 is not just a date on the calendar. It is a symbolic reminder that time is moving forward with or without your awareness. There is a window, a sacred opportunity, to awaken, to reflect, to change course before the cycles of life close and reset. This window is not promised to stay open forever, and that is why the now becomes so precious. Human beings often live as if there will always be more time to apologize, more time to start over. More time to get serious, but time does not wait for intention to become action. It waits for no one. The illusion of delay is one of the greatest enemies of transformation. People postpone what their soul already knows they must do, because they are waiting for a sign, for permission, for the perfect condition. But the truth is that the sign has already come. The inner unrest, the longing, the discomfort, the repeated patterns, these are all messages not to be ignored but to be honored with movement, with discipline, with courage. There is something sacred about acting when the soul is calling. That call does not always come with clarity, but it always comes with truth. Deep inside, everyone knows when they have drifted from their path. Everyone feels the misalignment, whether they admit it or not. But admitting it is not enough, realizing it is not enough, it must be followed by action. The urgency of now is not about rushing blindly, it is about rising consciously. It is about no longer postponing the work that only you can do, no longer blaming the past or fearing the future, but showing up fully to the present with strength and humility. The present moment holds a power that the mind cannot fully grasp. It is the doorway through which all healing, all clarity, all real change begins. But to access it, one must be willing to stop running, to stop hiding, to stop making excuses. The modern world offers endless distractions, endless ways to numb what is essential. But the deeper self cannot be silenced by noise. It will keep speaking through anxiety, through fatigue, through conflict, until it is heard. And if it continues to be ignored, life will step in. Events will begin to align that force a pause, a reflection, a reckoning. This is not punishment. It is alignment. There is a moment when the pain of staying the same becomes greater than the fear of change. That is the moment to act. That is the moment where the now becomes alive, urgent, necessary. To wait is to gamble with your own evolution. It is to gamble with the time you have been given, not knowing how much remains. The most awakened people are not those who had the easiest path, but those who responded to the call without delay. They felt the urgency and did not shrink from it. They stepped into it, even trembling, and allowed that urgency to shape them into something more awake, more disciplined, more aligned. The invitation that is being extended now is not one of comfort, but of truth. It is not about adding more to your life, but about removing what no longer serves your higher path. That takes effort. It takes honesty. It takes a willingness to confront the ways in which you have been asleep. But once that confrontation begins, transformation becomes inevitable, because the present moment, when met fully, contains all the wisdom, all the guidance, and all the strength needed to take the next step. It does not require perfection, only presence. And the more you choose to respond now, the more the path will reveal itself, step by step, with each breath, with each choice, until what once felt far away becomes the ground beneath your feet.